To add or subtract decimals, we line up the numbers vertically according to the decimal point. Next, add or subtract like we would with whole numbers. Next, drop the decimal point down vertically into the sum or difference. Up first, we have 15 and 52 hundredths, and we have 2 and 371 thousandths. Notice we are lining the decimal points up vertically, and we want to add these. Now add like we would with whole numbers. Imagine there's a 0 here. If it helps, you can write it there. Now we have 0 plus 1, 2 plus 7, 5 plus 3, 5 plus 2, and we'll bring down the 1. And notice we need to drop down that decimal point, and we have our sum. In example B, we'll start by aligning the decimal points. Notice we don't see a decimal point in 142. It's to the right of the 2. Then we'll copy down the other number. Again, if you want to, you can put zeros here to the right of the decimal point. You don't have to, but if it helps you see what's happening, we can put them there. And now add like usual. 0 plus 5, 0 plus 9, 0 plus 0, 2 plus 6, 4 plus 2, 1 plus 1. And again, we have our sum. In part C, notice we have a negative plus a positive. Recall that we treat this like subtraction. We're going to take the biggest number, 65 and 81 thousandths, and the 39 and 52 hundredths, and we'll subtract the smaller absolute value from the bigger absolute value, and look at the sign later. If it helps, we can put a 0 here as a placeholder. 1 minus 0, 8 minus 2, 0 minus 5 means we need to borrow from the other 5. Now 10 minus 5, drop down that decimal. 4 minus 9 we can't do, so we need to borrow. 14 minus 9 is 5. And then 5 minus 3 is 2. Notice that originally we had negative 65 and 81 thousandths. That number is bigger than the positive number, 39 and 52 hundredths. So our result needs to be negative. In the next example, we're adding 3 numbers. Notice the last one is negative. So let's take care of the 2 positives first. 80 and 26 hundredths and 92. Let's add these two. Eight plus 9 is 17. And now we're adding a negative 14 and 549 thousandths. Since we're adding a negative, think of that as subtracting. So let's start with our previous sum and subtract the 14 and 549 thousandths. We'll put a 0 placeholder to help us. We need to borrow from the 6, making it a 5. 10 minus 9 is 1. 5 minus 4 is 1. We need to borrow from the 2. We now have 12 minus 5 is 7. We need to borrow. Now 11 minus 4 is 7. 6 minus 1 is 5. And we'll drop down the 1. And this number is positive. In these examples, we will be finding the difference, subtraction. 246 minus 78 and 3 hundredths. Notice we want to line up the decimal points. We don't see a decimal in the 246, so it's understood to be to the right of the 6. If we want to add some zeros, that sometimes helps. And 0 minus 3, we need to borrow. There's nothing to borrow from here, so we need to borrow from the 6, making it 5. Then we make this number a 10, which we can now borrow from. Now we have 10 minus 3. That is 7. 9 minus 0 is 9. 5 minus 8, we can't do that, so we need to borrow from the 4. We now have 15 minus 8, which is 7. 3 minus 7 we can't do, we'll borrow from the 2. And now 13 minus 7 is 6. We'll drop down the 1, and don't forget to drop down that decimal point. And now make sure our sign is correct. We have 246, which is a bigger number than this second number, so our result is going to stay positive. Up next, we have 60 and 95 hundredths minus 87 and 31 thousandths. Notice we have a smaller number minus a bigger number. So let's start with the 87 and subtract the 60 and 95 hundredths. We'll use a 0 placeholder there. Just pay attention, the result is going to be negative because we have a smaller number minus a bigger number. 1 minus 0. 3 minus 5, we can't do that. We need to borrow. We can't borrow from the 0, so we'll borrow from the 7, making it 6. 10 becomes a 9, and now we have 13 minus 5, which is 8. 9 minus 9 is 0. We'll drop down the decimal. 6 minus 0 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. And keep in mind that this result is a negative value. Again, it's negative because we have a smaller number minus a bigger number. In our next example, remember that when we have this setup, we can think of this as negative plus negative. So we're adding these two numbers and then making the result negative. So we'll copy the first number, copy the second number, remembering to align the decimal points. We can use a 0 placeholder to the right of the 7. And let's add these. We have 5, 16, carry the 1, 9, drop down the decimal point. 0 plus 2 is 2, 1 plus 1 is 2, and keep in mind, negative plus a negative is a negative, so that result is a negative. In this example, we have a negative minus a negative. Remember, when we have double negative like that, we can think of that as addition. And now we have a negative plus a positive, but notice the negative is bigger. So we're going to subtract these, and the result will be negative. 152 and 3/10 minus 96 and 58 hundredths. We'll use a 0 placeholder beside the 3. 0 minus 8, we cannot do that, so we need to borrow from the 3. 10 minus 8 is 2. 2 minus 5, we can't do that. We'll need to borrow from the 2. 12 minus 5 is 7. We'll drop down that decimal point. 1 minus 6, we can't do that. We need to borrow. We now have 11 minus 6, which is 5. 4 minus 9, we can't do. We'll need to borrow, making it 14. 14 minus 9 is 5. So we have 55 and 72 hundredths, but keep in mind this result is negative because our first number is negative and that number is bigger than the second number. So our result, negative.